Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Dan Bennett, and today I have the distinct honor of talking to MICHELE GRAGLIA, Italian supermodel and one of the foremost ultra runners in the world, 2020 Moab 240-mile champion, 2018 Badwater 135-miler champion. MICHELE, it is so awesome to talk to you.
Dan, thanks so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm super
Great
stoked
to connect.
Yeah, it's so awesome to meet you, and I'm super stoked for this podcast. You're a man who's done many adventures and seen many things. One thing I was curious to hear about was you have run ultras in the Yukon, freezing temperatures, froze your corneas, and you have been to Badwater, one of the hottest places on earth. Which is worse for you, the extreme cold that can freeze your corneas or the extreme heat, which puts you into kidney failure?
Right. Well, those two extremes are certainly, there were two big adventures, that's for sure. Pushing yourself through an ultra marathon and doing it in an extreme environment definitely, emphasizes the experience. If we talk about what's worse, I would say in terms of physical performance, the heat is definitely more debilitating because, you risk heat strokes, the stomach doesn't work properly, there's so many layers to it. But if we're talking about from a safety level, let's say that the Yukon was absolutely more challenging. The Yukon itself is a semi self-supported race. So you have to carry the sled with all the mandatory gear for survival.
Yeah, it's
you
like
gotta be
pounds.
That was a good 50 plus pounds. Yeah. And you have a harness that you gotta, you basically carrying the sled throughout, just because, if in case of emergency, you need to be able to, provide and take care of yourself for hours on end before, the rescuers come get you. It's the year after I ran it, a friend of mine, Italian friend of mine, very accomplished ultra runner, done a lot of stuff all over the world. And he got inspired by the fact that in 2016, I ran the Yukon, I won it. So he presented himself at the, towed the line, and throughout the night, he started having issues. And, hypothermia really messes with your brain. It sends wrong signals to the body. And so he basically kind of lost his cognition and sat there for hours and hours and hours. He got rescued eventually. But the tragic story behind is the fact that fast forward 4 weeks later, they cut both his arms and both his legs off.
Oh, geez.
Completely.
Wow.
So it's, that's the type of danger that you put yourself when you do stuff like that. Badwater, absolutely devastating for the body. But if anything happens, you pass out, your crew picks you right back up because it's run on the road. It's like on the Death Valley Road. And so, there's some level of safety there.
Right.
The Yukon, you are completely responsible for yourself. So that, to answer your question, was absolutely more challenging.
Wow. That's absolutely crazy. And I'm fascinated hearing you talk about your corneas freezing and the vision was blurred. Like, I didn't even know that could happen. So for
me neither.
Right. I imagine it was quite a surprise. It was quite a shock.
It was quite a surprise.
What did that feel like?
Well, the thing is, that was my very first experience in that type of environment. And so I kind of, I did my research, but I didn't have the time or the opportunity because, I live in Southern California. Yeah, I got high mountains, but even in the winter, they barely dip below zero. Down in the Yukon, we dipped in 40 below. So that's a different extent of heat. I mean, of cold, sorry. Yeah. And so, with the problem again, it came up because the racing tactic that I adopted, which was to go fast because I wanted to break the course record. I wanted to win, all this stuff. And the material. So the one thing that you need to know when you race in those conditions is almost adopting a tactic that allows you not to sweat. So to stay kind of cold enough and move at a speed that doesn't exert too much so that you can control your body temperature. The problem,
Oh,
sweat is a big danger in those in that environment, because you can, you risk on um, basically, you're wetting yourself,
yeah.
if you allow me. And so,
Yeah.
you create that layer that freezes right away, and then from within it freezes the clothes, and so it doesn't give you any more protection from the outside, so it
Mm,
becomes an extra danger. And talking about the face, I had a mask, of course. The problem is, again, moving fast, I was like beaming a little bit, I was sweating around it, around the seam of the mask, and that was freezing my skin to the point that it started burning. And so that's when,
Jeez.
that was one of the stupidest thing I've done, but I decided to just take the mask off, and it was 35, 40 below. So
Oh my
for a few
God.
hours throughout the night, I kept running, kept running. Then at some point, I'm like, why does it look like I'm underwater right now? Like I see, but I'm like, I'm not seeing very well.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized that my cornea was frozen, and it didn't thaw out until I reached the finish line and eventually got in the hut, which was the only outpost there in the middle of nowhere. And thankfully they got a little hot water and I thawed out, literally.
Wow. Yeah, I saw the pictures of your beard was like frozen. It was just,
Yeah.
you looked like, yeah, you just escaped a blizzard,
Santa
like,
Claus.
because, yeah, exactly. I was like, Jesus, that was crazy. And so then what are the unique sort of conditions that you have to deal with at Badwater? It's fascinating to me that it's such a notorious race that draws in the ultra community, almost
Yep.
like championships of sorts. Everyone's hoping to get there and
Yep.
perform well. What are the challenges there with, sweat exertion and the heat stroke, and how do you deal with that unique challenge?
Right. Well, Badwater is, as you just said, is a unique challenge. It cannot be compared to any other race. Of course, the distance is formidable. 217K, 135 miles nonstop through the hottest place on earth. When I ran in 2018, when I won it, we started at 11 p.m. at night in Badwater Basin, and the temperatures was 124 degrees at
Wow.
11 p.m. at night. Yeah. So that's a place where it's so hot that even whether it's sunny or not, it's so scorching hot. And so to confront a race like that, you need to, of course, do your homework, prepare your body, prepare your mind, but you also have to have a strong, well planned out, tried out nutrition,
Mhm.
and more importantly, hydration plan and cooling plan. Because of course, as I mentioned before, in the Yukon, you're by yourself, but in Badwater, you have a crew
Mhm.
that kind of leapfrogs you the whole way around, the whole way through. And so, you have 135 miles ahead of you, but every mile and a half, 2 miles max, eventually you see your team on the side of the road. They park the car, cross the street, come down with sprayers
Yeah.
and anything else, ice bottles, ice water, ice,
Well, except
putting
when they
your
lost you. Except when they lost you that one
right. That man,
time.
we could talk about Badwater. I've had three experiences of Badwater: 2016 first time, 2018, and then this past summer. So the first time, it was my first experience out there. I didn't really know how to face that challenge, and
Mhm.
so I made a lot of mistakes. To be honest with you, I what's the word? Not underplayed, but underestimated it.
Right.
I underestimated the challenge. I was like, I'll drink some water here, I'll drink some water there, I'll take some salts here and there, I'll be fine. Wrong, like I ran strong until my body completely shut down. I started, sorry if I can say, I don't know if I say, but I started peeing blood.
Mm.
My kidneys were shutting down. I passed out more times than I can count. But for whatever reason, I was so driven to bring it to an end that I literally crawled for over 60 miles, 50 miles, something like that.
Jesus.
It took me an outstanding amount of time, well beyond what I had planned to finish in. And so, I finished that race, at least give me the knowledge or the understanding of what needed to be done. So a couple of years later, I towed the line with a lot more preparation and planning. And I'm happy to say things went well. Things went smoothly. That one time, of course, you have a lot of highs and lows throughout the day. You have a lot of issues that arises, stomach issues and stuff like that. But being consistent, staying on top of your nutrition, staying on top of your hydration, allow me to basically not stop for a single step. I ran for 24 hours straight, and it's one of my greatest honors, and it's one of the probably the race that I'm the most proud of, just for the fact that that's the one that inspired me right from the get-go. That's a race, the one single race that once I found out about, once I discovered ultra running, it was the biggest challenge. It was the toughest race out there. It was the biggest calling for me. And so, it was the crowning of a lifetime dream. And, that's doesn't happen often.
Yeah. It's a spectacular victory. And like you said, I mean, so many people are drawn towards it. Is there a race out there that you've just been dying to do, but just haven't had the chance yet?
Well, I am very much drawn to, I love all the ultra trail races. I love, all these, because every place also kind of draws its own community. So it's great to experience different places. But if we're talking about races that actually fascinate me, we're talking about the most extreme. So that's why I did Badwater. That's why I did a Yukon.
Yeah.
There is this one race, there are two races that I like, just, cannot wait to do. One is called La Ultra, which is in Ladakh in northern India at a very border with Nepal. And it's the highest race in the world.
Wow.
It's a race that starts at 15,000 feet. So you're high up there in the Himalayas. And it's a 200 miler.
Jesus.
And it's all in between. The lowest point of the race, I believe, is 14,000 feet. And the highest point is over 18,000. So we're talking about massive, high altitude, and running those conditions absolutely becomes a challenge. And the other race, there's a second one, that I throw in there, the same spot, is called Tour de Jean. It's a race that to be honest with you, I started 3 times and I haven't finished once. For a problem or another. One time, the first time I fell off. It's the toughest trail race in the world. It's a 200 miler through the Alps, through the ruggedest terrains you can think of. It's a race that has almost 80,000 feet of elevation of climbing in 200 miles. So that's like climbing Everest 2.5 times.
Jesus.
Yeah, within 200 miles. It's insane. The first time I ran in 2016, I was doing very well. I felt good. In the middle of the night, I got caught by a storm right at the top of the pass, lost sight of the trail, fell off a cliff, and almost died. I broke 3 ribs. I scraped my face. I was, tumbling down the mountain, and thankfully, had my poles that helped me stop the fall and save myself. But that was a close call. Wow. Second year, I had went back and had a physical problem, so I had to call it. And this past season, this past summer, I was very much planning to run Tao 200, which is in the same circuit of the Moab 240. The only problem is fires hit Tao just a week before. Race got canceled on a whim. I jumped on the plane, went to race. And, that type of race is not something you can just wing, You need to do specific and proper preparation to prepare yourself for that. So it's still out there.
I'm glad you brought up the Moab, because that's a race I am just absolutely fascinated by. You won that in 2020, just such an incredible thing. What points? I know you hallucinated. I know you had Achilles problems at points. What was the biggest point of adversity during that race, and how did you deal with it?
I gotta tell you, the biggest adversity was hit me about 220 miles in. That's when I hurt my Achilles. And I was pushing really hard. I was on record pace. I wanted to get the record, so I was really working for it. And on an uphill, I should have listened to the body. I should have maybe backed out a little bit, back down. But I kept on pushing, and on a pull off, my Achilles it didn't snap, but it almost like got torn. And so from that point on, basically I crawl for because they say it's 240, but it's more like 245, 246, so it's a little longer.
Wow.
So basically it took me like I would say over 10 hours to do those 25 miles. I was literally crawling. I had over when I was at that point, I was about 220 miles in. Goggins, which was in second place and chasing, he was about 5 hours behind me at that point. So I had a pretty substantial gap on second place.
Yeah.
When I finished, I only had an hour and 45 minutes.
Wow.
He ate 3+ hours just because I literally crawled for 20+ miles. And that was the most excruciating and disgusting situation I've ever been, just because, you feel, the finish line is so close. You already ran 220 miles. You only have 20 something to go. It's like you smell the hay in the barn, and you have the competition catching up on you, and everything is falling apart. So it was very, very challenging.
Yeah, that's like something out of a horror movie. You are crawling away while David Goggins is chasing you down.
Exactly. That's a worst nightmare.
Oh my God. What kept you going? What was your why in that moment when you were crawling? You described it like a death march. How, what did you tell yourself in your mind those last hours?
Yeah. Every race has its own level of fascination and challenge. The reason why I like these monumental ones, the biggest ones, is because they really put you to the test. I know 100 milers are really hard. They're very challenging, but I've done it. I've done it in so many different ways and places that I am confident that, I know I can do it. Okay, let's just say that. I know I can do it.
Yeah.
And so it's only a matter, at that point, it only becomes a matter of competition. So where do I place? And time. How fast can I run it? So that kind of switches a little bit the focus towards what truly called me, which is the challenge and the adventure. The adventure begins when you step outside your comfort zone and when you do stuff that is not within your control, let's say, right? So when I total line to the Moab 240, it was the first time that I ever ran nonstop that type of distance. And so to me, the whole thing, the whole inspiration, motivation behind it was to find out if I could do it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of raised the stake there a little bit. And I was like, you know what? Not only I want to find out if I can do it, but I want to find out if I can do it nonstop with no sleep. So that was in hindsight, it was a little bit of a mistake because a few power naps here and there, you lose time on the trail, but you make it up later on when your brain actually functions and you don't start hallucinating and seeing giraffes on top of mountains. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know what you mean, but I understand.
Right. Yeah. You can imagine, it's
right.
You're completely delusional, incoherent, completely you become unattached. You become not unattached, you become detached from reality, from the world. And so that also becomes dangerous. Also for the fact that, I basically jumped in that race almost last minute because same thing happened last year. I was training for a specific race, got canceled a week or two before COVID, fires, all the stuff. So I jumped into Moab, didn't have a crew. And I didn't have a pacer until 202 miles into the race. So I ran the first 200 miles plus completely by myself, through the nights, through the heat, through the cold, through everything that came at us. And so the second night by myself moving through those mountains, it was quite a trip. Yeah,
Wow.
that was the second hardest part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And I imagine it's like, like you said, it's 240 something miles. So at 100 miles in, you're a little bit more than 40% of the way through. Are you, when you get to 100 miles, is it like, wow, I'm dead tired, but I know that I can push so far beyond that I can run on empty forever? Or are you in just such great condition from doing these ultras that at 100 miles, you're like, all right, I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay.
I think it's a mix of both. You know, 100 miler is still a very respectable distance, and it's a very challenging distance. And you know, it took me about just about 20 hours to do that first 20 miler, first 100 miler.
Hmm.
So it was a, for me was a decent pace in the sense, not too fast, but not too slow either. So I was right on target to feeling comfortable, knowing that I still had 140 miles ahead of me.
Yeah.
So I ran the second 100 miler in 26 hours. So 20 hours the first one, 26 the second one, for
Wow.
about 46 hours, 202 miles into the race at that one checkpoint. And then, you kind of, you're venturing in uncharted waters there, in an unexplored territory, if you will. And so that's when you really put to the test. As I said before, the 100 mile, I know I got it. I know I can do it. I ran before 175 miles. So I knew I could kind of, that race I did was 175 in Italy, and it destroyed me. That was several years ago. And so the thought of doing an extra 60 plus miles on top of that
Yeah.
was what called me to do Moab, to find out what happens even when you're completely broken.
Mhm.
And the fascinating part again about the sport is that we can all do, we find out that we're all much more capable than what we think we can, what we are. And so, to me, putting myself out there in that situation and, hurting myself, and it was all part of it. It was kind of self-propelling energy, motivating myself despite the injury, despite the pain, despite everything that was coming with it. And I had a good gap. I knew that I only had 20 miles to go. So, at some point, there's one picture that actually leaked out that I was laying on the road. It was
Yeah, I saw
published. It was
that.
like, it takes 30 seconds nap or whatever. It wasn't really a nap. It was more like that was just shortly after I hurt myself, and I could barely put my weight on it. Could barely put my weight on my right foot. And so I was like, I'm very close, but I still have a marathon to cover.
Yeah.
Through, not through flat roads, but through steep mesas and canyons and, desert terrain, technical desert terrain. And so that was like a moment of despair where I was like, how the heck am I going to do it? I can't get down on four legs, you know what I mean? And crawl like a baby. And so, that moment I was like, you signed up for this. This is what you want. So pick yourself up and keep moving forward, because that's the only thing you can do. And so, one foot in front of the other, limping, using my poles, hopping through, I basically, I got it done. It wasn't pretty, but we got it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And such a sort of traumatic hit to your body. What are the days following Moab, running 240 plus miles? In the days after, what does your body feel like? What does your mind feel like? 60 hours of sleep deprivation on top of all of that. What is that recovery like in the days after?
It's really amazing how to witness what a body is capable of, and how it reacts to certain stimuli, and how it absorbs so much discomfort and pain and hurt that you put it through. And I was very surprised. Finished the race, I had such a strong adrenaline rush that even after the race, you might think you would just pass out and sleep for like 2 days straight. But that wasn't the case. Like I couldn't fall asleep. I was so hyped up, for the fact that I did it. I won it. It went well, was excited. I had my friends around. And we went out, we had pizzas, we, went back to the hotel, took a bath. I
That
was,
pizza
of
must have
course,
tasted pretty good.
what's that?
That pizza must have tasted
Oh my
really
God, are you
good.
kidding me? Pizza and beer never tasted so good.
Oh my God.
And, I went back to the hotel, took a bath, and, I was just like, I couldn't fall asleep until maybe 5, 6, 7 hours after I finished. So
Wow.
it took me a while to kind of relax and let go. And then you would think, oh, once you sleep, then you're out. I was up 3, 4 hours later,
Jeez.
just because the body is flooded with adrenaline, endorphins. There's so much that I was just, I just got up and met with my crew. We went out for breakfast, went back to the finish line and cheered, the finishers coming in the following morning.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
just such a shock, and the excitement and
Yeah.
everything. During
And
the
then, of course, it takes a little time afterwards. I think the hit comes after 2 or 3 days, when
yeah,
your body, the body starts flushing out the toxins, all of that stuff, and you start feeling the pain setting in. You start feeling the fatigue catching up, and so, it took me about a couple of months to get back on my feet, both physically, um, and also emotionally,
mm,
psychologically, because you put yourself through so much, not
yeah,
just on a physical level, but on a psychological and an emotional level. So that really hits you on so many levels.
yeah, I can only imagine. And during the race, experiencing those hallucinations, like you touched on, like the giraffe and whatnot. Did you know that these were hallucinations from experiencing them before, or is there ever any like of a blurred line where you're not really sure what's real and what isn't real when you're out in Moab and it's dark and it's at night and it's
Yep.
crazy? Like, yeah, how do you respond to these stimuli you're seeing?
The first time that it happened to me was 2012, through my first 100 miler, and I was freaked out.
Mm,
I was legitimately freaked out. I was like I started shivering because I thought I was being chased. And, I thought it was a pack of wolves. And then I thought it was a pack of Native Americans throwing spears at
oh
me,
my
like
God.
completely wild. And I was like, I knew it was me, but I never experienced it before. So it freaked me out. This time I was like, I acknowledged that I was tripping. And, it's a natural thing when the brain is put through so much intensity and strain, it does releases DMT. So you legitimately tripping,
Wow.
on a mild level, of course.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And so the hallucinations are factual. Like you see them. Like I'm like, I know I'm looking at it. I'm like, the last 5 miles of that race, I was running with my pacer, and we were running along the Colorado River towards the finish in Moab. And I was like, we were laughing. I mean, I was destroyed. I was, my mind was completely gone. My body was shot. My Achilles was destroyed. I was like a mess.
Mm.
And we were laughing still, in a moment of despair, we were laughing. I'm like, I know they're not there, but I see 2 blue whales right here. Like I see those 2 blue whales in the river. I know they're not there. And we were cracking up. And, those are things that really they're really so unique and interesting and fascinating about our physiology and our minds,
Yeah.
and if you acknowledge it and you just experience it, it becomes, a unique experience, because it's not going to do anything to you. Of course, if you see something weird and you jump off a cliff, yeah, that's a problem. But
Yeah.
if you're coherent enough to know that, to acknowledge that that's what you're experiencing, that's what you're doing, then it just becomes part of the journey, just like the pain. Pain
Yeah.
is inevitable. It's part of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. I always think too, I'm like, the problem could be like, if you didn't realize like what was real and you thought like your pacer was a hallucination, you're like, nice try, pal. I'm not following.
Right. Throw rocks at him.
Yeah. No way. You're just like the blue whales.
Exactly.
Oh my.
Yep. Oh man, that was something.
Do you ever, consider trying other like endurance challenges, whether it's like, you know, climbing Everest or like marathon swimming or like a double Ironman triathlon. Like,
Yeah.
I assume, you know, you being one of these people that has just this thirst for, you know, conquering these great challenges. Do you ever consider something besides running to really push yourself as well?
Absolutely. You know, the big mountains always call, always.
Mhm.
Especially, I don't know if you had the chance to watch The Alpinist
Oh my
or
God.
14 Peaks.
I watched it 2 nights ago on Netflix
So good, right?
so good.
Yeah.
So
And
crazy.
yeah, absolutely. That was mind boggling, you know.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you have the chance to watch 14 Peaks.
Not yet, but I've seen it. Yeah.
That's another really good one. And that one is like, you know, to put it in you know, they're almost like different categories. The Alpinist is a unique talent, is a unique talent. It's
Hmm.
a unique talent, it's a unique mind, it's a unique thing. So I wouldn't, even with my greatest desire, I don't think I could be able to do what I think his name was Mark.
Marc Andre. Yeah. And for
Right, Mark Andre, right.
people that don't know what we're talking about, he was free climbing. So essentially he was scaling these like basically almost flat faces of mountains, but without any, you
No
know, security
equipment.
to fall back on. Yeah.
Yeah.
With his just climbing up.
Is just his body, his hands, his feet, and
Yeah.
his crazy desire. And that was, you know, just like Arnold, they're mind-boggling you know, performances, let's call it that way, that they're so extreme and so unique that there's just literally not even a handful of people that could do it. So that's something, you know, of course, fascinating to watch, but not, you know, I acknowledge that that's not in my cards, you know.
Right.
Rather, you know, when I watch 14 Peaks, that's stuff that I know within that I could definitely do.
Hmm.
You know, because that becomes less of a, you know, you're climbing gigantic mountains in the Himalayas, but most of them, they don't require that technicality. It's
Hmm.
more of a physical strain. It's a physical effort
Yeah.
because you need to be able to sustain the cold, to sustain the high altitude and everything that comes with it. But when it comes down to the technicality of it, it doesn't even come remotely close to what Marc Andre was doing.
Hmm.
That sheer rock, rugged, crazy climbs with no ropes, no harnesses, nothing. That's just like, you know, that's next level. What this guy did in the Himalayas was absolutely inspiring, but I don't see it to be you know, I can see that the record. It's it's a record that can easily be broken if you have the right finances to do it.
Mm.
You know, because when it comes down to the big mountain climbings, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars for one peak,
Hmm.
between traveling and logistics and equipment and whatnot. So it becomes, in my opinion, just a financial issue more than a feasibility of it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's okay. I circled around a little bit, but to answer your question, big mountains for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm very much drawn towards is ocean rowing.
Oh yeah. Like
I don't know if you ever
across the
heard of it, but
Atlantic and the Pacific. Oh yeah. I've
that's
seen
right.
all sorts of stuff, right?
There is a race that goes from the I think the Canary Islands to the Azores. So the Canary Islands are the westernmost islands that belong to Spain, I believe.
Mhm.
And you row across the Atlantic all the way to the Azores in the Caribbean. And that's an established race that, you know, it's kind of been tickling my curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now are you training for running, or are you thinking about these other things? Like where are you at right now?
Well, as of right now, to be honest with you, I'm not focused on those at all. I
Mhm.
know they're there. I know they might come in my future, but as of right now, my focus is, you know, very much towards running. I know I have a few good years to get the results I want, to establish myself the way I would like to
Mhm.
in this community, in this industry. And so you know, though these things are amazing, they don't work specifically towards, you know, my athletic performances.
Right, right.
Because of course, you know, yeah, you're gonna be, if you do mountains, big mountains, you're gonna be acclimatized to high grounds and low oxygen levels. But being out there for so long, usually takes a few months. Once you do this type of expeditions, you're not going to be able to train consistently. You're not going to be able to stay on top of what you need to do to perform right. And so as of right now, it's a thought, it's a
Yeah.
eventual project, but nothing set yet.
Yeah. What's fascinating too about endurance sports and ultra running specifically is it, unlike any other thing I've seen out there, it seems to transcend like age and gender. Like you can have people from all different walks of life just dominate. A great example is Courtney Dauwalter with her amazing performance at Moab and so many other races. People of all different ages just competing with each other on this different. I mean that must be inspiring in some ways, that the length and of your career can go in so many different ways. And I was curious to hear from someone such as yourself that's very in tune with this community and has personal expertise. Like, why do you think it's a sport that can be dominated by people from so many different walks of life, unlike other sports where sometimes there's such a thin, you've got to be from ages 22 to 30, this is your peak.
Right,
you can compete at this.
Excuse me. Well, the answer is the fact that ultra running strips you down to your core, and it kind of levels out the physicality of it. In every sport, as you say, you have your peak around 20 to 30, and then you have like a sloping downhill from there. Just because most of the sports that we entertain ourselves with are very much related to sheer strength, pure speed, everything compressed and intense in just football, whatever, an hour or two. Soccer, it's 90 minutes. Basketball is 40 minutes. You know what I mean? 48 minutes, whatever it is. So it's like, it's even when we look at a standard running track, half marathons, everything is very much speed based. And it's a physiological thing that males usually are stronger, young males are faster. And so it's inevitable. The results speak for themselves. But when you tread into ultra running, the longer you get, the less speed becomes important. Now it becomes a matter of the mind, the will, your strength, your resilience to keep moving forward despite everything. And there was a graph that came out just about a year ago, and I was so fascinated to see the studies that were done. And basically they were saying, okay, on a running scale, you're looking at 5Ks. On judging the results and the world records and everything below that, they were able to assess that in a 5K, the discrepancy, the gap in between men and women is about 17%. When you go to 10K, it drops to 15. When you go to half marathons, it drops to 12. When you go to marathons, it catches up to 7-8%. When you get to 100 milers, it drops to only like less than 5%. And now we're seeing this even at big races. Look at an amazing, famous race like Western States. This year, 7-8 women were in the top 10, the top 20. So that means there was almost even. Almost even. 8 women out of the top 20. That means 12 men, 8 women in the top 20 in the most competitive race in the US. Think about that. And even more astonishing was to discover that once you go past 170, 180 miles, women actually have an advantage.
Wow.
Because it's no longer a matter of how fast, but it's about how much pain and hurt you can take and keep moving forward despite everything else. And they say that women have a higher threshold for pain because of childbirth and everything that comes with it. So here, and the same thing goes with age. As you grow older, you of course lose speed, but you gain a lot more self-knowledge, self-management,
Yeah, you're hardened.
and you do develop more stamina just because you know how to deal with it. You know how to deal with the discomfort that comes with enduring, ongoing effort. And so, all of these examples they're so awesome to me, just because, you don't need to, if you want to enjoy a sport, you don't need to be confined in those 10 years where you're at your peak and then you just let yourself go. And you see that in plenty sports where top athletes in tip-top shape at 30 years old, you look fast forward 3, 4, 5 years later, and they're all fat and out of shape.
Yeah.
That's demoralizing, because it's like, you just use your body to make money and achieve what you needed to do, but then you just let yourself go. And that's, that to me is a shame, because, there are plenty of examples of people in their 60s and 70s still crushing under milers, still being healthy, still be strong, still enjoy nature, still enjoy themselves, pushing their boundaries and living life fully.
Yeah.
There's no limit to that. And so that's what I'm aspiring to.
Yeah. The distance and the endurance is so crazy. I was wondering, getting this opportunity to speak to a rare human that's adventured out to 240 miles, how much further do you think it's possible to go? Like, if you could stay awake, let's say, how much longer, and your mental fortitude, if that's just no factor, how much longer could you go before your body shuts down or you just like die or something? Like, how far can you go? That's the question,
That's a one question that it's about pushing the envelope. That's the one that thrills me the most. That's the one that, I guess it's the biggest curiosity. Not how fast, but how far can we actually go as humans, as, with this body, what can I do? And so finding out that, when I first ran 100 miler, that was the staple. Then eventually I hit 175 and I was like, okay, now I know I can do that. Moab represents a new opportunity. And now I know I can do that. So to be honest with you, I don't think there is a limit until the sleeping breaks in. Like, you can kind of override the pain. Pain is inevitable, as I said. Suffering is optional. So if you can control the mind and accept the pain for what it is, you can just keep going. Nutritional level, you can eat and run, no problem. So you can eat and have the calories and keep doing what you're doing. You can drink and run. So that's not a problem either.
Yeah.
The problem becomes the sleep.
Yeah.
You do need, either power naps or something. You need to take a break to reestablish some sort of clarity, mental clarity. I think it's a necessity to sleep after 72 hours, or you just risk of dying, I think. I haven't looked too much into it because I didn't want to freak myself out. I think we're talking about, you can stay with no food for weeks. You can stay with no water for days on end. But I think after 3 days, your body simply shuts down. So 3 days, I think, is the limit.
Yeah. And one guy that's definitely been a testament to that idea of just keep going is someone that I believe inspired you into ultra running, was Dean Karnazes, who wrote a book that you found in Union Square. Did you ever get a chance to meet him and tell him, that he was an inspiration, or have a conversation with him?
Absolutely. I had a pleasure to meet him in 2015 in San Francisco, and it was so funny, because I was there to crew for a friend running the North Face 50 miler, and so the race started and I started crewing for my friend, and it was still early, it was still dark, it was still pre-dawn. And I'm running up this trail, and I see a light in front of me. And as I catches up to the light, I'm like, this guy is fit, I could see his legs. I'm like, this guy is moving. I'm like, okay. And, after a second, he turns around and he's like, just like behind the shoulders, like, hey, what's up? Good morning, whatever. We just exchange a couple of things. And I'm like, wait, I know that voice. I didn't see his face. I'm like, I recognize that voice. So I was like, hey, is that Dean? He turns around. It's like, yeah. And I'm like, like mind blown. And I'm like, so it's just like, you just meet your, you know, I'm not a fan. It's not like, it wasn't a fanboy type of thing.
Right,
It was
right.
more like meeting somebody that played such a huge role in your life.
Yeah.
Because, one of the things that I was able to share with him and tell him and beyond grateful to him, because his book, I read his book is in one of the most challenging times in my life. I was at the top of my career in New York, and I was absolutely depressed and discontent and everything that came with it.
Mm.
And I was at the lowest I've ever felt. And that book, his words, his story, not only allowed me to change my life, but in that moment, he actually saved it. And so, that becomes a much more powerful, experience rather than, oh my God, I'm a fan. I love what you do, whatever.
Yeah.
No, this is like, I am grateful to you as a person because you show me a way. You show me a different way of living. You show me a different lifestyle. You show me a different path that I could have taken. And because you did it, I believe that I could do it. So that's how it is. And, we had a nice picture, and we had the chance, when I won Badwater, he wrote me a very nice email. And, it was one of those things that bring tears to you because, they're so meaningful and powerful. And then, just recently we spoke when last year I launched my book. He was able to contribute, sending a quick, what do you call it? Advanced praise or whatever it is
Right,
to the
right.
book. So, he's been an active part of my running life and career, for sure.
Yeah, it's such a powerful experience to meet someone like that. And in writing your own book, was there a sense that by sharing your experience, you could maybe do for someone else what Dean did for you and show a path and advance, pay it forward and give your story to someone else?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That was the main goal from even the thought of writing a book.
Mm.
And the reason why I was like not necessarily aching, but looking forward to getting a book out is because of what I experienced up to that point in my life. And I was, let's say, I don't want to say privileged, but absolutely unique position.
Mm.
I was born and raised in Italy. I came to the States following the family business in the floral export industry. And then, being scouted by this modeling agent and starting traveling the world, and, became a somewhat successful model, and, living it up in Miami, New York, Milan, Paris, everything, it's came to and being introduced to that lifestyle and the socialite and everything that comes with it, it almost becomes that dream story, like that when we're all young, we all want money, success, fame, and fancy things, right? Fancy parties, glamorous parties with famous people, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right?
Yeah.
And I was in the unique position where I did experience all of that.
Mm.
And despite having achieved that and having achieved, I would say financial success and personal success, and I moved to New York to work at the highest level with the biggest photographers, biggest. I'm not bragging. I'm just trying to depict,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
to give you the right picture. And despite all of that, it was almost like a funny thing. It was I reached the top of my career, reached the top of what what I thought was the dream, right? The American dream of success to achieve. And despite that, I've fallen into a pit. I've fallen into, as I said before, in the most critical time in my life. I was very discontent. I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I wasn't, you know, I didn't find any fulfillment in what I was doing. That's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And so, if you don't have to, if we cannot answer those existential questions, then you can have all the fancy things and live and live in the nicest places. But if the discontent comes from within, if you don't find purpose in what you do, if you don't have meaning in your life, then nothing else matters. And that's when I very much related to what Dean was saying. We came from different life paths, but we came to the same conclusion. We reached that success and we were still miserable. So what next? He
Yeah.
showed me what next, and I believed it, and I went for it.
Yeah. It's such a powerful message for everyone else. And like you said, the ultra story comes from so many backgrounds. I think Courtney Dauwalter was like a teacher, David Goggins, a military man, as a Navy SEAL, Dean, his background, your background. It's such a powerful message about meaning. And I like the word that you use in your book to describe that time in your life, hedonism, meaning that you can be surrounded by the most instant gratification, the pleasures, magnified at a scale that a lot of people wouldn't see, the opulence and the wealth around you and being a model, all this stuff. But, these things that might be idolized in some ways don't bring as much as the, simple, humble journey of journeying by foot and running and something like that. And I think that if everyone could get a little taste of that endorphin rush, then the natural high, the runner's high, how much better we could all be off, if we took some lessons from your story.
Yeah. It's a matter of challenging yourself, to putting yourself on the line and finding out what you're capable of. And, it all becomes, the rest, everything else becomes diluted. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain, but once you connect with yourself, that's the part, that's the thing. Running already allows you to kind of sense that, but ultra running really amplifies the experience. And that's why I think it's such a profound endeavor, challenge. And that's why people, despite how hard it is, they just keep going back for more. It's because it becomes almost like a spiritual journey. You really transcend your physicality. You tap within yourself. You confront it's a way, if you allow me to say this, it's a way to raise your consciousness.
Wow.
Because you find yourself in the rawest of conditions. You're traveling the simplest, most primal way. There's nothing else but you, your legs, your heart, your mind to move forward, your heart. And it's the single most amazing experience, because again, you stripping yourself down of your physicality, of everything, and you allow yourself to live in that moment. And that doesn't happen often. That's what yoga in meditation is all about. And being I am a yoga teacher as well. I studied in India, and I was able to kind of bring those two worlds together and understand that what these Vedic people, the yogis, 4, 5, 6,000 years ago, they were already tapping into this. They were challenging their physicality to transcend their minds and eventually tap into that higher awareness, right? Into the higher consciousness. And ultra running allows you to do the exact same thing. You're stripping yourself down of your physicality because you're running past physical, the physical pain threshold. You're riding over it. You're transcending your body.
True.
And you really reach the higher state. And it's so incredibly unique that it creates a connection within yourself that expands to everything around you. So I do believe that ultra running makes you a better person, not in a physical term, but because you're experiencing so much that, most people within their comfort zone would never have the opportunity to do so. And so you already have heightened yourself to a higher level just because you towed a line and you faced that challenge.
Wow, that is so incredible about, yeah, just expanding that and how taking that pain and towing the line, but how it gets amplified by the most extreme conditions, whether it's the distance or even the weather and all the things
Right.
around you pushing beyond that point. One thing, it's my favorite question to ask, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, is
Yep.
what do you think the biggest misconception is about you? What do people not know about Mickey that goes, not well understood? What's the biggest misconception?
Well, there are always levels to things, and there's people that might depict you as Superman when you do these type of things, but you know and all my friends know this, the way I am and all of that, but I do believe I'm a very normal person.
Uh-huh.
And that's the message that I always try to share. And we are all our own heroes. We're all our superheroes, and we all just have to break through the limitations that we put on ourselves to be able to experience life to the fullest, and be able to transcend our perceived limitations
Mm.
and experience life in its rawest, purest form, confronting ourselves, pushing past our limits, and finding out what we're capable of.
Yeah, and that's an inspiring message too. And I think sometimes it's almost an excuse if you can say, well, that guy who won Moab and won Badwater, well, he's different than me,
Right, right.
But once you can accept that you're a regular guy just like me and my buddies and everyone else,
Yep.
it opens up, room for
Possibilities.
improvement.
All
Yeah,
possibilities.
possibilities to
It's
do
really,
things.
it's really, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh
interrupt,
no,
but
please go ahead.
it's really all a matter of believing
Mhm.
and putting into work.
So what
So
would your message be for someone that wanted to get involved in ultra running? They wanted to open up these possibilities and experience challenging themselves to the fullest. How would you go about doing that? From couch to 5K, but really from couch to 100K or something like that.
right. Well, if we're talking about from a physical level, definitely following a structure plan,
Mhm.
because the most injuries always happen at the very beginning of your running journey, just because you're eager, your body on a muscular level responds fast, but it requires a lot of time in terms of tendons and ligaments and stuff like that. That's why when you see people that start running, they always hit plantar fasciitis, they hit
Yeah.
Achilles tendonitis, they hit knee pain, joint pains, all type of pains. And so just take your time to adapt the body. So
Mhm.
the body needs months and months and months of easy, consistent effort so they can kind of adapt to that strain, and then kind of building gradually to it. But then, if we're talking about ultra running, you definitely need to, I would say, adapt the mind as well. Train the mind to, you need to train your mental fortitude. And by mental fortitude is almost transcending the mind. So shutting down what the mind tells you, because the mind is a trickster. The mind is a great tool to
Mm.
achieve what we need to do, but cannot be the driving force. Just because the mind as a evolutionary pattern will always tell you, put you in a doubting spot. It always puts you in a position where it wants you to take the easy way out. And so you need to shut that thought.
Yeah.
You need to be able to, and that's when I talk about meditation. Meditation comes in handy here because it allows you to disconnect from the outside world, process your thoughts more as a witness and not being wrapped up in those thoughts that can tell you, oh, my knee hurts, I need to stop, my stomach hurts, I'm gonna quit, I'm gonna get to the next aid station, I'm gonna drop. No, shut all of that. You know what you set out to do, you prepare physically, you need to control your mind. And if you do so, you can allow yourself to push past any boundary and limitation that you ever thought possible. And that becomes a pretty sweet journey.
Yeah. With your background and your knowledge in these sort of fields, are you able, or do you try to tap into like a meditative state while you're running, while you're on these journeys and challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. That's when the control of the mind kicks in. And it's really not like control, it's more like experiencing and witnessing what's going on. I don't know if you're familiar with Eckhart Tolle, but I do follow a lot of his lessons and teachings, for the fact that we often recognize ourselves, identify ourselves with our thoughts and our minds, but we're not that. The driving force is something higher. We can have it here, we can call it here. It's the heart, the spirit, the soul, whatever we want to call it. So I think these type of challenges allow you to tap into that. You transcend your physicality, you're transcending your mind, you're tapping into this higher self. And that's when the meditation comes in. It allows you to understand this step. Our Western society always stop at the mind, always stop at the power of the mind. Everything is materialistic. Everything is materialistic based. Everything is materialistic driven. Everything stops in the realm of what we can touch and understand. But we only when we talk about religion, we talk about a spiritual self, a higher self, or whatever it is. But if we're looking past the dogmatic teachings, the spirituality is so much higher and broader. And you can only experience in going through this type of experiences, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't experience in just sitting at the table or sitting on the couch or walking around your garden. You need to put yourself out there. You need to confront yourself, strip your physicality to it's almost like peeling an onion. You need to peel all the outside layers to get to the heart of it. And once you get to it, the answers are the same for everybody. And that's something that you cannot show, you cannot tell. It's something you need to experience for yourself.
Oh,
yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what can ultra fans expect from you next? Is there a race you're looking forward to, if you're comfortable sharing what the plan is going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a pretty exciting thing just happened. I had a few ideas lined up for this year, but just recently I was contacted by this new organization set in London, based in London, and they are launching in 2022 the very first 100-miler World Series. And so they're going to have a few races around the world, with the final in October in Italy. So I'll probably be racing in Brazil to qualify in the spring, and then aim for the World Championship in October in Italy. So I'm very excited to, for two reasons. One, compete in such a great stage. It's going to be the first year, so even more exciting. And second factor is I had the chance to go back to Italy, to my home country.
That's so awesome. Well, Michele, I want to wish you the best of luck in that upcoming series, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much. It's been a great pleasure.
Honor to talk to you, and so exciting to learn from you and all your wisdom. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks again for having me, Dan.
Yeah.
The best to all of you guys.
Yeah. Huge thanks to Michele for coming on the podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode and took something from it. Please like and subscribe, and tune in for more great episodes.